What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Happy Major League Baseball opening day. Happy Masters opening day. Should be a very fun day of sports. But of course, we are going to talk Packers 365 days a year. It never stops. There's always things to go over. And today is certainly no different. A slight hiatus from draft coverage today. Probably pick right back up tomorrow, assuming there's no crazy breaking news in the land of the Green Bay Packers. But we did have some news before we get to our main topic, which is going to be Amari Rodgers. But before we get there, we did have some news from Wednesday, and that included the retirement of longtime Packer Whitney Mercilus. Of course, I say that facetiously, but he did have a cup of coffee with the Packers last year. And for the third straight season, right, where the Packers brought somebody in, I think towards the end of the year, and a veteran that maybe give him a chance at one more Super Bowl ring, Jared Valdir, and then Tramon Williams, and then of course this past year was Whitney Mercilus, and trying to get that veteran maybe one last Super Bowl ring or a Super Bowl ring. Just didn't work out for Mercilus, but he was a really interesting player. He came in and as soon as he got on the team was starting to make an impact really early. Looked like it was a genius signing from Brian Gutekunst, getting him on a minimum deal and having him come in and really make an impact from day one. And then of course he goes down and gets injured and then like he was out for the year. Like every report was he's done. And then all of a sudden, as all of these Packers were starting to come back towards the end of the year, you got this like Whitney Mercilus is coming back and you're like, holy crap, like how the heck did he possibly make it back? He worked so incredibly hard to get back for that game. And then unfortunately, Green Bay, of course, lost to San Francisco, which we don't need to talk about right now. But he gave everything he could to get back and play in that game. And he just seemed like the consummate professional. He seemed like a guy that you want in your locker room and on your team. And quite frankly, he seemed like the perfect veteran backup to the team that you have right now in Rashawn Gary, Preston Smith, and a bunch of question marks. And I say that because even if they draft somebody in the first round, like even if, go back and listen to yesterday's episode, whether it's, Mafe or, Carla Fides or whomever, right? Any of those guys would be great fits, potential fits round one. Even if you got that guy, it's a rookie and, you're probably not too concerned over taking the place of Tipa Naliai, Jonathan Garvin, any of those guys. And a Whitney Mercilus type player still makes a lot of sense, even if you have Gary Smith, round one draft pick, and Whitney Mercilus. Like that's a dream scenario, right? That still is a really good edge rusher group. And then you've got everyone else after that competing for a spot, going to have to make their way on special teams. That's exactly how you would potentially draw it up. But with Whitney Mercilus officially retiring, that is no longer an option. So Green Bay will unquestionably let this play out through the draft, see what happens, but do not be surprised if they get into the potential veteran free agent market at some point, even if they draft somebody early, to see if they can maybe find somebody that could, help and be a depth piece on that edge rusher position. Some guys who could make sense, not saying that any of these are necessarily on the top of Green Bay's list, but Jerry Hughes, former Buffalo Bill, Melvin Ingram, who finished up with the Chiefs last year, and then Justin Houston, who's bounced around a little bit lately. Any of those guys would be potential veterans, very much in the same ilk, as a Whitney Mercilus. So we'll see if Green Bay doesn't, in fact, attack that position via the draft, or if they do end up, maybe with a veteran signing along the way here. But for now, it remains a question mark because, again, as we talked about yesterday, you've got Rashawn Gary, you've got Preston Smith, and then you've got a bunch of question marks after that. So the one question that we do not have to ask any longer is, will Whitney Mercilus be back? He officially has gone on the retired list and will no longer be playing this upcoming season or probably ever again. All right, let's talk about our main topic today, and that is the one and only Amari Rodgers. And it's so easy, and I can be guilty of this as well, but it is so easy after one season to, we want that instant gratification, right? And we see players like Justin Jefferson come in and Jamar Chase come in and Terry McLaurin and DK Metcalf and AJ Brown and so on and so forth. We see so many of these players come in and make an impact right away that if you take a guy in the second or third round and in their first year, they have really at best a net zero impact, if not worse than that, from what Amari Rodgers was last season. And it's immediately, he's a bust, he's not going to work out, and you might as well just get rid of the guy now. As Packer fans, of maybe any fans, we should know better by now. whether it has been, Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, whether it's been Rashawn Gary, like there have been a plethora of players who have not performed well early in their careers and have gone on to do phenomenal things. Now, Rodgers is, obviously quarterback is a little bit of a different position here. Rodgers wasn't expected to be ready day one. Devontae Adams and Rashawn Gary at least showed some pretty significant flashes even in year one, which Amari Rodgers did not. But of any fan base in the world, from a team that has gone decades, literal decades of draft and develop, there is no fan base who should know better that, hey, maybe give a guy a little bit more time than one season. And listen, Amari's first season left a lot to be desired. And I mean a lot to be desired. Because while he didn't get many opportunities at wide receiver, he did get plenty of opportunities as a returner and could not make the most of those. When he did get in at wide receiver, there was nothing, like you can't point, I know he only got a handful of, snaps and targets. Like it's not like it's anything to write home about, but there's no play that you can point to in, preseason, regular season, on special teams, etc., and be like, that is what we're looking for. That is a flash that we can look at and say, all right, we can build off of this. There was none of that for Amari Rodgers. So to say it left a lot to be desired would be a vast understatement. The fact he couldn't get on the field, even though there were some injuries at times, there were some opportunities in slot. Randall Cobb went out with injury, and Amari Rodgers, you would think, would have a great opportunity to take that spot. He really didn't. That is concerning. He struggled mightily as a returner. That is concerning. So again, even when given opportunities, even going back to preseason and those sort of things, it's not exactly like he looked the part of whatever he was asked to do, whether that was slot receiver, anything, gadget guy, kick returner, punt returner. It just didn't go as you would expect, according to plan, any of it. So it's disappointing. There's no two ways about that. And again, I'm not going to sit here and wax poetic and say, he's going to be great. I certainly can't look at anything that we've seen so far from Amari Rodgers and say, I wholeheartedly believe that he's going to be average, good, great, or better than that. There's nothing I can point to that gives me faith in saying that from his time in Green Bay so far. But we all know that Green Bay has a major opportunity at wide receiver right now. And how that exactly ends up working out, this could seriously be a situation where Amari Rodgers is buried at number 6 on the depth chart, right? All of a sudden they go out and draft 2 guys in the first 2 rounds, and they've got Randall Cobb and Allen Lazard, and then they go out and get a veteran. Now Amari Rodgers is fighting with Malik Taylor and some of those guys for special team snaps as wide receiver 6. There's a realm of possibility where that happens. I don't think there's a world in which he could get cut or traded or anything like that. I don't think that world exists. I think they would give him more time, although we are coming off an offseason where the Packers released Kamal Martin, very quickly. So you never quite know what will potentially happen. But I do think that Amari Rodgers is going to get another chance. And I do think that he has the opportunity to take the most, take advantage of that situation and the fact that Green Bay doesn't have a deep wide receiver core right now. Even if they bring in rookies, as Amari Rodgers can speak to, it's not easy to come in and be a top 100 pick and immediately contribute at wide receiver. It is a very nuanced system. Aaron Rodgers has very specific demands. Matt LaFleur has very specific demands. You have to be able to block. You have to be able to run precision routes. You have to be able to know the checks. You have to be able to know the audibles. That is a lot for a rookie receiver to come in and do. And all I want to say here is that let's give this a hot second. Let's not just jump to the conclusion and say Amari Rodgers is a bust. We can say his first season was a bust. If you want to say that, okay. We can say his first year didn't go according to plan. We can say we have plenty of doubts as to whether Amari Rodgers can be that guy at the NFL level. I think all of that's fair. But to write him off or to say it's over or cut him or trade him, let's give him at least a second training camp and see what he's capable of. Because if you go back to his college tape, there was a ton, and I mean a ton, to be excited about. There is a reason why Brian Gutekunst moved up to take him in the 3rd round. And remember, Brian Gutekunst said very clearly they were very torn between Amari Rodgers and Josh Myers with their 2nd round pick. They almost selected him in round 2. That's how much they thought of him. There were a lot of teams that really liked Amari Rodgers. There were, pretty much every review of the draft. Go back and look at it, and everyone loved the pick of Amari Rodgers to Green Bay. It made so much sense. It fit what Matt LaFleur wanted to do. He fit perfectly in the slot. And then, you also have to remember too, right? The addition of Randall Cobb changed the calculus for Amari Rodgers unequivocally, right? When Rodgers comes back and basically demands Randall Cobb as part of the equation, like that, pumps the brakes a little bit on Amari. And I'm not saying that like if Cobb didn't come, that Amari was just set to play a ton of snaps. I don't think that's the case. I think they would have went with Lazard in the slot, MVS and Adams on the outside, with, of course, Adams getting plenty of time in the slot as well. So I think they would have done a variety of different things. I don't think Amari was ready, but I think it did change the calculus a little bit. And I think the last thing I want to say before we go back to the Clemson tape a little bit here is that the Packers wide receivers over the course of time have all developed at different times. And yes, there have been guys that come, have come in. Greg Jennings is a great example. James Jones is a great example. Even Devontae Adams, again, had some flashes in year one and were able to contribute. But there's a lot of guys that didn't. Donald Driver, his first season, I know he's a 7th-round pick. I get it. He was at Elkhorn State. He wasn't expected to come and contribute. But his first season, 3 catches, 31 yards. Antonio Freeman, his first season, 8 catches, 106 yards. Randall Cobb, his first season, significantly better than Amari, but still 25 catches, 375 yards. Not like he's lighting the world on fire in that season. Not even 2 catches per game on that year. Robert Brooks, 12 catches, 126 yards his first year. Amari Rodgers, 4 catches, 45 yards. So again, what we should all know at this point is different players start feeling comfortable and start really playing at a different speed at different times. And yes, there's plenty of other situations. Jamon Moore, 4th-round pick, not that different, it's a bust, right? And that could be the case with Amari Rodgers as well. But just as easily as it could be Jamon Moore, it could be Donald Driver. You just don't know how these things are going to turn out. And while I'm not leaning super positive at this point, I did go back and watch some of this Clemson tape, and it reminded me of why I and so many other people in the Packers were so excited to get this guy out of the University of Clemson. So I watched, I think, 11 or 12 games of Amari Rodgers last season when I did my scouting report. I went back and watched some of his film recently as well. And here were my big takeaways from that scouting report and as I was watching it again. The first thing you should know is that he was a yak machine. And I mean a monster in that regards. He had 613 yards after catch in his 2020 season alone. Those are just yards after the catch. 613. 335 in 2019, 405 in 2018. He finished his college career with 1,353 yards after catch. Not total receiving yards, just yards after catch. In 2020, 60% of his total yardage came after the catch. And what was amazing about watching him play in college is he had different ways of beating you after the catch. If you were flat-footed and waiting for him to make a move, he would run by you. If you were chasing him, he would cut back and cut upfield and make a move by you and run right past you. And if he couldn't get past you, he would literally run through you. There were reasons why people were comparing and saying like his tape reminds me of Deebo Samuel. Like there is Deebo Samuel similarities to what his tape showed at Clemson. From just being able to run through blocks, using his physical lower half to run through arm tackles. He didn't play like a 5'9" guy. He just didn't. And that's why Green Bay was interested in him, even though he didn't necessarily fit their normal size thresholds, and even though they knew he'd probably be just a slot wide receiver. So that was the first thing that stood out again. The other thing that stood out is that in college at Clemson, yes, he did a lot of gadget stuff, but he was more than just a gadget guy. He could win at all different levels of the field. He won short, he won intermediate, he won deep at times. You could use him in those gadget roles. You could use him at running back. You could line him up all over the place. Earlier in his career at Clemson, he lined up a lot at outside wide receiver. I don't think that's ever going to be what he evolves into in the NFL, but you saw him win in a variety of different ways at all different spots of the field, and it wasn't just, we're going to hand it off to him in the backfield or throw a bubble screen to him. He was winning as a wide receiver. So this isn't just some, guy that you're like, I don't even know who to compare it to, but like, it's not just some gadget guy who you're putting in the slot and hoping, he can make a couple things happen. He showed that he could be a wide receiver at Clemson. Now, of course, there were some downsides as well. He had a lot of concentration drops in college. He had 6 drops and just 77 targets in 2020. So his hands did become an issue at times. We saw that be an issue with Green Bay this past season. Whether it was fielding punts, he had a drop during the course of the season. Those are things that he's going to have to improve. When you're a smaller receiver, more often than not, you have smaller hands, smaller catch radius. You have to be near perfect. And throughout his career at Clemson, it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't really good either. So that's going to have to be something that he continues to work on. It showed it reared its ugly head in college, and it reared its ugly head in very minimal playing time as, again, both a returner and a wide receiver for the Packers in 2021. The reason, if you go back, it was Perry Goldstein and I, we did a bold predictions episode around this time last year. And I said my bold prediction was that the Packers would draft Amari Rodgers. I got everything else wrong, so I'm not bragging here. But that was the one I actually got right. But the reason I believe that is because when I watched Amari, he was a plus run blocker at Clemson. He gave so much effort, and he would be physical at the point of attack as a run blocker, where I'm like, man, if they get this guy in the slot, they can use him as a gadget guy. You can put him in the backfield. He can block. He can win on multiple levels. You can play him outside in a pinch. Like, he just fits everything that they want. Maybe not the athletic speed, maybe not the size, but like the demeanor is really what fit Green Bay. And I thought he'd be a Packer because of that. It ended up being correct. But again, we didn't really get to see that, part of Amari Rodgers. Just not enough snaps to see what he can do as a blocker. But you go back and watch his Clemson tape, he would drive people through the sidelines at times. Like, that's the intense blocker that he was. So you have hope that he can still find a way to do that at the NFL level and make that a plus as he, evolves as a wide receiver in the NFL. From a route running standpoint, some pluses and some minuses, right? He showed head fakes, he showed jukes, he showed slight and sudden movements that would just throw cornerbacks and defensive backs off their games a little bit. But his releases were poor at times. His route tree wasn't very expansive. His overall route running game needed a lot of improvement. And I think that really carried over and is a huge reason why he didn't find a niche with the Packers offense in 2021. He's going to have to become more nuanced in that regards. There were a couple plays. There was a play, even just like a little swing out to Amari Rodgers from Aaron Rodgers, where they just weren't on the same page, even on a very simple route like that. So he's going to have to become a professional in that regards, really up his game and become, again, a more dedicated and well-rounded route runner at the NFL level. And then special teams was something that showed up at Clemson, but of course was not ideal, let's just put it that way, a season ago. In fact, it was abysmal at times, to the point where they brought in David Moore and tried really almost anything they could to find a replacement. They gave Randall Cobb another chance back there. It just didn't go according to plan. When I noted in my scouting report last year from Clemson, I noted he was never going to be a Desmond Howard or like just this breakaway, 4.340 speed, or like he just never showed that as a returner at Clemson. But I did think he had the ability to be like a Tyler Ervin. 7 yards per return, adequate, safe catching the ball, like just making a quick move and getting upfield. I thought he had the ability to be that. Last year he didn't. And that again was a really disappointing aspect of his rookie season in Green Bay. So again, you go back and watch his Clemson tape, you feel pretty comfortable with him as a returner. You watch him in Green Bay and it just didn't even look like the same guy. We're going to get to why a little bit more in just a moment. Next up, as far as a negative goes, exactly what you'd expect, right? Contested catches and catch radius is just not something that he's going to have a ton of value with, right? He's 5'9". He needs to win with, route running. He needs to win with, I know he's not a burner, but like he needs to win with agility and speed. And then he also just needs to win with scheme too. So Matt LaFleur needs to help him out a little bit. And he just needs to become, again, a better professional, work on his releases, work on his route running, because, Aaron Rodgers isn't going to be throwing jump balls to Amari Rodgers, right? He's not going to be throwing a bunch of back shoulder fades. Now, he did do a great job of adjusting to the football, and that was another one of my notes. While he's 5'9", and while, again, he's had some concentration drops and you're not throwing him jump balls, when he did get the ball thrown his way, he did everything he could to contort his body and hang in the air and do a variety of different things to just adjust to the football and make the catch. So despite the fact that he has a small stature, he did the best he absolutely could to make sure that, even if there was a sliver of opportunity, he was going and getting the ball, adjusting his body and making those catches. The next one is he had a toughness over the middle, and that's going to be something that he has to show and really knock out of the park as he tries to develop and earn a spot in the rotation this upcoming season. If you're a slot guy, you have to have that toughness. You have to be able to go over the middle without fear. And we don't know if he could or couldn't in the NFL just because we didn't see that. He didn't have an opportunity to, I guess I should say. But I do think that that was something that showed up in spades at Clemson and hopefully is something that will serve him well as he tries to make a second-year jump in Green Bay. All right, the last three I think are really key here. The first one that he had in spades at Clemson but was missing in Green Bay was demeanor. He had a physicality, a toughness, a fluidness, a confidence and a demeanor. As I mentioned, blocking people off the field. You could tell like he felt like the guy at Clemson. And then he got to Green Bay and you could tell he felt lost. Like when you hear people talk about like a rookie, like you can see him thinking out on the field. That's what I got the feeling of when I watched Amari Rodgers. Like he was the dictionary, definition of thinking out on the field as a rookie. He just never felt fluid, confident. He didn't have that same demeanor he had at Clemson. You go back and watch him his last season at Clemson, you see all of that, the confidence, the jukes, getting upfield, making people miss, breaking tackles. He oozed it. At Green Bay, it was the exact opposite. It was like, what am I doing? What am I supposed to do on this play? How do I go about this? Now I've got the ball. Now am I going to fair catch? It just never felt confident. And I think your hope is that the game slows down and he gains that confidence and he gets that swagger and demeanor back. And then the rest sort of takes care of itself. Will it happen? Only time will tell. But again, you look at his tape at Clemson and you get confident about what he potentially still could become. The other one that he was very prevalent at Clemson, but was missing in Green Bay, specifically as a returner, I kind of, hinted at this a little bit earlier. He was a very north-south runner at Clemson. He would get the ball in his hands and he would move upfield. Now, he would move upfield and he would still have a little bit of, shake and shimmy, or he would try to run through people. But there was none of this like trying to make 50 jukes or, reverse fields. You go back and watch him as a returner, as a Packer, and he's trying to go like horizontal, sideline to sideline. Like the worst thing you could do as a returner, just get upfield, do exactly what you did at Clemson, and you're going to be in such a better position. You don't need to try to take this thing 80 yards. Catch the ball, get 7-8 yards, and we're going to be good, right? Like that's exactly what you want out of Amari Rodgers right now. Instead, it was way too much fidgeting and juking and trying to make people miss or going sideline to sideline, running horizontally. If he can get back to that north-south running, that vertical attack, and just the little nuances, just the little shimmies, running through people, that's where he's going to have success. The more he tries to be this, Tyreek Hill type player, he's going to fail. That's just not how he's built. That's just not how he's going to beat players in the NFL. So he has to get back to that north-south approach. And then the last thing, and this kind of goes back to demeanor and confidence and everything as well. He ran a 4.5 240, right? Go back in my notes. You can check it out over at Packer Report. But one of the things I mentioned is throw the 4.5 240 out the window because he played fast. I didn't care that he tested poorly because you go watch his tape at Clemson and he played fast. In Green Bay, he played slow. And again, that goes back to confidence and thinking. This is all to say is that what you're hoping for with Amari Rodgers is that the game slows down for him. If the game starts to slow down for Amari and he gets that confidence and he gets that swagger and he gets some wins, I think we can start seeing his game turn around and him start looking like Clemson Amari Rodgers rather than 2021 Green Bay Packer Amari Rodgers. And we should all know as Packer fans that we are better than that to judge a player just off of one season and give up on him. There is plenty of time left for Amari to succeed. He can still be the guy that Brian Gutekunst moved up for in the third round and hopefully can be the guy that breaks the trend of some pretty awful third round draft picks for the Green Bay Packers. That's going to do it for me today. Always appreciate you joining me. I'll be right back here tomorrow, likely with a wide receiver draft breakdown, so make sure to check that out. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.